You are listening to an MLGA Network podcast.
Welcome to Thank You for Your Servers, a show which looks at the tech news of today, but from a libertarian perspective. Now here are your hosts, Thaddeus and Gary.
Thank you for logging on to Thank You for Your Servers. I'm Thaddeus Preston, aka Nick Way, and this is our weekly rants about tech topics of the week from a Liberty perspective. And this and many other podcasts are brought to you by Make Liberty Great Again network of podcasts. What's going on, Gary?
How's it going there, Thaddeus?
It's been one hell of a tech week because, it's geekdom galore. Google I.O., Microsoft Build, and we have many, many other topics to get into. But let's kick things off, first things first, with Google I.O. It's geekdom galore. I used to love Google I.O. Still kind of do. Still get very excited when it comes to things from the keynote. But Google I.O. kicked off on May 7th with Sundar Pichai giving the keynote speech. And basically, the big takeaways from the keynote, and of course, Gary will also chime in on this, is we get new Pixels that are cheaper. Yay. The Nest Hub Max, which does away with the Nest brand, it is now Google Nest, was debuted at Google I/O and shown to be very impressive. We got our third look at the Android Q beta. We don't really know what Q will stand for, what sweet dessert it will stand for.
I don't know what it could stand for. Really.
I don't know. I mean, it could probably stand for, Quaalude if you want to get high. I don't know. I don't know what Q will stand for.
Like Nestle Quick, maybe?
Ooh,
that's
maybe.
The only, or is that K? I don't know.
That's a great question. I don't know what it would be. Either way, there was some kind of new things about that. They also announced that this really cool aspect of the new Android beta. It will definitely be live captions in all videos within on the device, which is something that we'll discuss in more detail because they really went heavy on AI, particularly getting AI to the edges, particularly on these devices. Next is Project Mainline, which is basically the continuation of Android's relentless pursuit to make sure that everybody, despite carrier and despite manufacturer, gets the updates necessary for Android. It basically breaks Android into modules and allows the update of different components of Android without, again, relying on phone manufacturers and carriers. Google Maps gets an incognito mode, particularly this year, and every year, right? Because Google gets a bad rap for this, as well as Facebook and these other titans. They're all about wanting to make sure that you can delete location history, web activity, and everything else. Incognito mode for Google Maps joins the cadre of tools for kind of tightening up privacy. Google Lens is going to get smarter and more creepier, which is awesome, because it will then be able to not only do what it has done in the past, and that is like, have you ever seen Google Lens like translate on page, if you point to like a foreign, a document with like foreign text, it will
I had never seen it in action, but when I saw it in the keynote, it not only translates the words into whatever language you want, it keeps the font, the color, the boldness. It's amazing. It just it really translates this whole thing into the full experience.
No, it blows me away. The first time I'd ever seen it in really beta was like a friend of mine came back from Iceland, and he was just like, yeah, that's what he did. And then this just takes it to the next level, particularly with the fact that they now they're pushing their AI again to the edges, that is to these devices, and it's going to be amazing. Other big announcements coming out of Google I/O, duplex for the web. So for those of us who were super excited about the Duplex demo last year, or creeped out, and basically Duplex was basically allowing Google Assistant to like make reservations for you with another human. And there was two or three creepy little. I say creepy in kind of a cool way, but like they were making reservations. The Google Assistant was making reservations, and it was like, giving hints like and yeah and and yes, and like it was able to like do multi-branch things where like, oh, this table isn't available, and so the Google like Assistant was just like, okay, well, how about this, or how about this time, or how about this day? So that basically gets extended now to the web, and they basically demoed, taking, if I'm not mistaken, just correct me if I'm wrong, Gary, like you made a reservation to do to rent a car or something, and it filled in all your key information based on your reservation for your flight and whatever and stuff like that on the web page, and it goes through your the web page and like makes the reservation for you.
Yeah,
via the web.
It basically read your mind, put in what you would have put in, and made that reservation. And it was, I got to admit, when I saw that demonstration, it was a little, you use the word creepy, and I think that's the word, mainly because it's so foreign to anything we've ever done. You're not really interacting. You're letting this smart machine interact for you on your behalf. And it has yet to be seen, I think, whether it will actually work
in the wild. Definitely, you want to see these things work in the wild.
But I mean, the demonstration was definitely impressive. And if anybody could do it, I think Google could.
Yeah, no, our Google overlords will figure out a way. There's no doubt about that. Developers have had these tools for a long time, where they want to kind of check like the functionality of a website. So they'll build a script on top of that actually goes through their web application and simulates what users would put into fields and what they would click and stuff like that to make sure that everything is functional. This just takes it to the next level, and you're right. Literally read your mind, but really just goes through your reservation that you have in Google Assistant, and just like, hey, you might need a rental car, or you might need some Airbnb, or you might need some whatever. And
some of the aggregate stuff that they were playing in it also was, when you were talking about the restaurants and going to the restaurant, you can bring up a menu at the restaurant, and it will know what's on the menu at that restaurant. And if you ask it hey, what are people interested at this restaurant? It will show you the most popular dishes at that restaurant. Again, yet to be seen how it's going to play out in the wild. But I think if people are using it and Google is having access to that data and doing the analytics on it, they're going to be able to know, where people's eyes are going and what pieces they're interested in, and sharing it with the world. I mean, their mission statement at the very beginning of the keynote speech at I/O was, I can't remember it verbatim, and I actually wrote it down.
It used to be organizing the world's information and making it truly accessible to everyone.
You almost said it verbatim. That's the way I remember it. Yeah.
And of course, don't be evil, which was always stupid.
They didn't say that.
They don't say that anymore. Because it's kind of like they've accepted the fact, like, okay, maybe we're a little evil, but you still like our cool shit, right? I mean, our cool stuff, right? And it's just like, well, yeah, we still do. Okay, well, you guys are still evil, but we still like your cool stuff. And
we like
it. So yeah, and I didn't delve too deep. I mean, it's typically for me, it's a nerd wonderland. I know there was some talk of in some of the other kind of breakout sessions for developers, like the Fuchsia OS, basically this new OS that they're going to start to consolidate Chrome OS, their IoT stuff, and Android into one unified like operating system. So there's a little bit more involved with that. I'm actually kind of interested in getting my hands on maybe some of the Pixels, because I mean, I like my Hero flagship phone from last year, but I also like, if I'm going to go travel to other places in the world, I don't like to take my almost $800 phone with me. These Pixels are probably, it's kind of like Google's harkening back to the old Nexus program, where they actually made like affordable, usable phones.
Yep.
So that they could,
There was a lot in the keynote speech, and I focused a lot on the keynote because that's the one piece that I really focused on. But there was a lot in there, excuse me, about making all of this accessible. They had a big, long human interest segment on a mother in India who was illiterate. She couldn't read. But because of the ability to have access to a cheap phone with this technology where she could point it at her kid's report card, for example, and have it read it to her. I mean, it was pretty powerful to see the change that it made in her life. Again, I don't know if it was staged, but I am assuming it wasn't. But, the skeptical part of me goes, okay, well, they're trying to sell it. But
obviously,
at the same time,
because it's all about it's all about stories, right? And that's a very powerful
sure.
one, right? Because you remember it.
Right. But anecdotally, I mean, I've had similar experiences where I have experienced something in technology that has changed my view on the world. And I don't think it's that big of a stretch to go to something like that and say, okay, you know what? If you can have a $30 phone that can do what a $700 flagship phone can, then you're going to change the world. You really are.
And it's true. And I mean, it's what they continue to do with all the data they have, and now all the expertise they have in machine learning. Another big thing that they announced and definitely broke down, and I assume there were breakout sessions about, is the fact that to allow all this machine learning to happen, they have their own custom silicon in the form of these TensorFlow processors that are going to allow them to at scale do these miraculous things that you saw in the keynote. I for one am always impressed about the hardware that is going to be powering this stuff, and I in order to make those types of powerful impacts, those kind of human interest story impacts, you're going to need compute. And no one is better at doing that than Google when it comes to that. I mean, I don't know if you saw the part of the keynote was like the project Euphonia for those who are disabled and stuff like that, and building tools that allow that stuff to happen. And everyone likes to beat up on the big tech companies and stuff like that, and sometimes they deserve a little kick in the butt, but when you see things like that and you understand what technology will allow and what will enable, people who were disenfranchised in the past to actually do it. I mean, if you want to look at a true liberty angle, there's nothing better than technology that are empowered the most, vulnerable among us to basically be contributors to I guess the global economy, right? And
they did have, they had a couple of people with they had one with ALS and another one with multiple sclerosis, I think was anyway, both of them had the one with ALS couldn't speak at all, right? This is same Stephen Hawking kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So the previous technology is, as they put it in the keynote, was you have to type every single word with your eyeballs, on this screen. And Google's coming up with, their basic approach to this thing is, what if there are other ways to communicate? What if words aren't the only way? So they're really thinking outside the box. And like you said, they're touching these people who they have a lot to contribute.
Yeah, no doubt.
But they don't have a way to connect. They've got this other guy who he couldn't barely speak, but they were working on speech recognition for him through some of this learning stuff that they're putting together. And they were demonstrating that it could understand what he was saying. We as humans can understand it. We can hear it and go, okay, it clearly the guy has an impediment. He's got some issues that he's dealing with, but I can kind of understand what he's saying. Well, they're getting the machines to do the same thing now.
Yeah. No, that's all that is very, very impressive. And again, and what we'll discuss later on in the show is like it was a kind of a more human Google I/O than it's been in the past, as Google is now taking the world's information it has been hoovering up over the last decade, and now starting to offer truly, it's kind of what we kind of discussed offline, and we should definitely do like a podcast of just our pregame or pre-show stuff, because like we definitely discussed this, where it's just like you could take the technology and move it to the real world and impact the real world, and that's what Google's doing with things like Nest and Maps and the things we're discussing right now for helping folks with disabilities and accessibility. And and like in Microsoft's build was much more geared toward the tools necessary to make people much more productive and stuff, and we'll get into that here shortly. But we got to move on to the next story, because this one I think is near and dear to your heart. You actually turned me on to this, and we actually had a very long discussion about it. And that's
we did.
Is streaming music is the streaming music model unfair to artists? Man, you take it away, man. This is your baby. So let's see what it is.
This one here really touched me a little bit because, number one, I'm a rock and roll fan. I love music of all kinds. And I happened upon an article. It was an interview with Paul Stanley of KISS. And basically, he was on tour. He did an interview with Yahoo Business promoting his new book that he's coming out with. And one of the pieces of the interview was where he basically came out and said that streaming music or streaming services are killing music because... And in his words, and it made a lot of sense to me, as a laborer, as an artist, I should be able to produce my product and put a price on it. And if you want to buy it, you buy it. And if you don't want to buy it, you don't buy it. But the streaming services are turning the table saying, okay, if you want to stream your music, we will pay you X number of cents or dollars or whatever for whatever volume, and take it or leave it. And it started me thinking, basically Paul Stanley's whole thing is this is killing the free market. Well, I don't know if it is killing the free market, because the free market is what enables services, streaming services like Spotify or any of the others, to start up, to grow, to get their base, and okay, so yeah, Paul Stanley, sorry, we're going to pay you the same amount of money per song that's streamed as we are some kid who came up with a song and published it, and this is his only song on Spotify. Okay, what makes that right or wrong? Well, the thoughts that came to my mind were, first of all, okay, Paul Stanley, shrewd businessman, as is Gene Simmons, his partner in crime, right? They grew up business-wise in the 70s. In the 70s, the paradigm was, if you didn't have $1 million studio to record your music in on professional equipment with a professional mixer and a professional person doing the mixing and doing the production and all that, and put $1 million into this album before it even hits the market, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything, right? You're not going to make the millions of dollars that Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons and all the others have made.
Yeah.
Nowadays, anybody with a laptop can produce music. And
this is true. Lil Nas X is a prime example of that.
It's amazing what these people are coming up with. And I think from an art perspective, it's a phenomenal improvement, because it gives people the ability to be artists and to put put out what their passion is rather than what some bigwig in an office with a cigar says you have to produce.
It's literally the democratization of the industry. That's what it is.
Yes.
Yes, a couple of points with it, right? So I read it and I understand it, and I'm very sympathetic to his argument. But here's one quote that kind of stuck out to me, and like it actually had made me think. You see, he says because musicians, as anybody who's a laborer, should be able to set their fee, and then you either buy it or not. It's the essence of the free market. The problem with the current music industry as it stands today is there's an oversupply of talent.
There's a lot of supply.
Supply. Yep. And that's actually pretty commendable, right? That leads to that democratization I'm speaking of. But I mean, Spotify just passed 100 million premium users. That's people paying $10 a month or more.
Yep.
And Spotify still lost money. So this quarter, right? It makes money from time to time, but it lost money, right? I mean, what does that tell you? Well, they're distributing a lot of their profits to these artists.
They are.
Or the middlemen. All right. Like the other thing, he can say that, like, he's been in the game. They're an established act. They know what they need to do. The third little secret about the music industry is like you don't make money from spins or album plays. You just don't. You make your money merchandising and touring. It's always been the case.
And if anybody should know that, it's Kiss.
Right. Just because you make a song, you put it out there for a price, that doesn't mean anyone has to buy it. But if a streaming service is going to give you the exposure and pay you, a couple, some crumbs, it's not about what you make from the plays. It's not even about what you make from the album sales. It's about what you make when you get your butt on the road and night after night you hit those venues. That's how it works. When I was an aspiring rapper in a former life, that is what people told me all the time. It was just like, nah. The A&R will pay you, you know what I'm saying, like up front and whatever. You'll record in the studio, you'll do whatever, but like you're not going to make your money until you are on the road or you are making appearances.
Until you're humping it and making the effort to get out there and put the blood, sweat, and tears into it, literally, you're not going to make the millions. You're not going to make the thousands. You're not going to make anything.
I mean, just think of it, right? Spotify alone has more subscribers than a local market has listeners. That's 170 in Q1 of 2018. They had 173 million monthly users, and 100 million of them are like paying customers. So, I mean, I'm sorry. If it's a supply and demand issue, if the amount of talent
absolutely
had stayed constant, then yes, people would be getting a little bit more money from these streaming services. But payola and spins and airtime are nothing more than promotional tools. If you're making money off of it, more power to you. You got a good agent, you got a good record label, but you need to hit the road and do whatever. And I mean, just again, the story of Lil Nas X, some trap rapper from Atlanta, who basically who he took a beat from some cat from like the Netherlands, and then did some country crap and threw it together and
I
put
love
it out
this
there,
story.
and he promoted it himself, and like. It is now literally the number one song in the world, or at least in the top 5.
He busted his butt. He got out there, and he used Spotify as a tool.
Yeah.
Now, whether this was his intent or not, maybe, I don't know. Maybe he was saying, okay, if I can make a few bucks off Spotify, whatever. But the thing went viral, right?
Yeah. No, Lord knows how many listens it has across many different platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Music. I mean, actual airplay. right? And then that
Right.
prompted Billy Ray Cyrus to come in. That lended cachet to it, and that's all she wrote. And and that whole story is a microcosm of why, at the end of the day, is streaming music, the model that exists, unfair to artists. In aggregate, the answer is a resounding no.
I would say it is, okay, perceptibly unfair to lazy artists. If
Yeah.
maybe if you're an artist and you feel, oh, I'm going to make $1 million off of Spotify and go buy my yacht. Okay, you know what? Good luck to you. If it happens, great. But if it doesn't, not surprised.
That person,
moving on.
And the way the algorithm works, that person would have to have 100 billion listens or something stupid like that.
Yeah, right. Like up with the Beatles and
astronomical.
stuff. Yeah, it ain't
Yes.
happening.
No,
So yeah, from that perspective, I think that more power to Spotify, more power to any of the streaming services. I think the artists would be smart to, if they're looking at it as a source of income, don't look at it as a source of exposure.
Yeah.
But get out there, do the hard work, get your butt on the road, and sell yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, a very interesting story, valid complaints from someone, in the old, someone from the old school and stuff like that, who doesn't necessarily see things the way maybe we see things, or even the way things are. I mean, that's not to say that, there isn't any validity in what he's saying. I mean, there absolutely positively is validity in what he's saying. That doesn't mean that there's anything you can really do about it other than hustle.
Yeah, there's validity in what he's saying if you limit your scope of the industry to just that. But the fact of the matter is, it's so much bigger than that, and there's so much more opportunity to be had. And really, streaming services, is that the real test of your popularity? Is that the real? No, it's your initial exposure.
It's across all social media and all things, and
Sure.
And the traditional routes, right? Because there's still terrestrial radio to a certain extent. It's how much you can sell on Google Music, Apple Music, you name it, right? It's less about physical album sales than anything else. It's just different.
Right.
Yeah, and so I get it, right? I mean, and it's always been the concern. It's always been, if you're not big, then you're not going to make a lot of money with this, right? You're not going to be able to, command what a Taylor Swift can command, or what a Paul Stanley can.
Right.
That being said, I mean, that doesn't mean that it should all be burnt to the ground, but I mean, it is what it is. All right, and so now we move on to what happened here at the other big developer conference of the week, and that is Microsoft Build. Microsoft Build is it's less like Google I/O in the sense that now Microsoft has truly, honestly become the IBM of the 21st century. It is an enterprise company. And they had a slew of announcements this week lined up for Build here. The company executives were detailed enhancements coming down the pipeline for Microsoft Search, its cross-domain search solution, and the Microsoft Grab, a unified programmable model for an API that provides access to data for Office 365. We got to talk about Office 365 demo, man. There was one demo where they were literally typing in a chat window in English, and in all the other chat windows within that, it was actually translating in real time as you were typing in other languages.
Wow.
It was Microsoft 365. At first, it was just a Google Docs knockoff. On the enterprise side, it is the real effing deal. It is phenomenal what they do with that thing now. There was the other demo that blew me away was they were actually so there was a spreadsheet within a document that people were collaborating with, right? And me and you have collaborated on Google Docs and stuff. And, when the connection's good, it's actually very smooth and stuff. But they were doing it in real time. Someone said, hey, we should probably move. They took the spreadsheet, took an instance of it, put it in this chat window, and they were both editing the spreadsheet portion of the document in the chat window. And it was just like, holy cow. And the fact
I could see my boss getting really confused by that.
That's very, and like this, is it going to be used a lot? No, but it'll be used for some other aspects and some other things. Like their enterprise stuff, Azure Active Directory, Windows 10, it's basically become Google Cloud services for like grown-ups. No one's using Bing. Bing sucks. But the simple fact of the matter is they're going all in. The SharePoint's better. OneDrive. You've sung the praises of OneDrive.
I love OneDrive.
I'm thinking about moving to OneDrive, even though I've always been a Google Docs, Google Drive / Dropbox guy.
Well, I'll tell you, for my I work for a very small company. We got 25 employees, and we just switched over a few months ago to Microsoft 365, and it has been night and day difference for us because number one, it handles all of your Office licensing. Every user gets to install Microsoft Office on up to 5 devices. They get a terabyte of cloud storage. Everything's held in one place. I can go to one dashboard and tell who's using what. I can tell who's the active licenses, who's the inactive licenses. I can tell how much storage they're using. Anyone's computer crashes, I can just go swap it out for a new one, sign into their Microsoft account. Everything syncs up and it's done. I don't have to go and reinstall anything, from a disk.
Yeah.
Worry about the license transfers. It just happens.
The things that they have made easier now, no longer is Windows this joke, right? Even up to the point where now the Windows terminal is not only tab based, but it's it makes the command line experience, of course, I guess, vastly improved. They're doing Unix command line like environments. They're tabbed, they're colored, they have emojis, and it's just like I'm like, oh my god, that terminal looks. I would go back to terminal if like the DOS prompt, right? CMD
right.
Looked like that. Sometimes you want to run things in multiple like tabs within a command line, right? Which Unix and Linux have been doing from time immemorial, but like this is better. Microsoft is also launching a Visual Studio Online code editor. So like no longer is it going to require you to have big beefy, when you're on the road, big beefy hardware to do any software development. So Microsoft announced that, it's going to do a private beta launch of like Visual Studio Online. It'll be an online code editor.
Wow. I hope to get a hold of that because I would love. One of the big problems I have with my developers where I'm at is, and it's a constant complaint, my computer's so slow, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, we got you like the top of the line machine with 16 gigs of RAM. We got you a terabyte of hardware. What are you doing when I get 3 instances of Visual Studio running and blah, blah, blah. I'm going, oh my God.
Right.
You
and what this will allow you to do is it'll allow you to leverage those Azure cloud instances that will give you what you need when you need.
Right.
I think they're gonna, and they're also gonna. They also announced like the next evolution of IntelliSense. That's basically auto completion for code. with something called IntelliCode. It'll be an AI assisted development tool for building better code or building code.
This I'm very excited about. Yes.
For years we've been hearing about experiments at some software companies, particularly Google, where they've actually had AI writing code. This doesn't necessarily write code for you, but it definitely suggests, based on what the context of the project that you're writing, that it'll suggest code completion based on the classes you've created and the and if you're an MVC developer, it's just like, hey, you can't use this. You need, how about you use this view because you're using this model, and like all this stuff. I've never been geeked. I've never been super excited about Microsoft Build until this year, and like I'm not a Microsoft fanboy by any stretch of the imagination, but like this was a big deal, and I'm blown away by the fact that like Microsoft is now like. The new CEO of Microsoft, Sanjay Nadella, if I pronounce his name right. If not, I mean, I'm slurring his ethnic name.
Don't look at me.
Yeah. That guy, that guy is like the Lee Iacocca of like this company. Jesus Christ, like Microsoft is back. I mean, I can't stress that enough. And they're killing it. They're the second largest cloud provider behind Amazon. In my opinion, probably because they have more paying customers. In my opinion, when it comes to cloud services and these kind of enterprise services, I mean, they just beat Google like they stole something. And like. I remember like that demonstration I think within SharePoint using something called Fluid. There's an API that allows you to do those things I discuss about multiple windows and instances of Windows that allow you to like type in one in German and have it translate in like Dutch in another and something like that. That stuff, this is all stuff that Google had developed years ago. I always tell people about the tragic story of Google Wave. And Google Wave was essentially this. Google Wave was essentially what we saw in that demonstration, plus Slack, plus, Google Docs, with a little bit of Gmail mixed in. And it was an amazing tool. I mean, and they never capitalized on it. Microsoft basically has taken those types of technologies, those types of workflows, and have just built for at least for a paying enterprise, far superior tools than you could get from Google or anyone. And bravo for Microsoft being absolutely
more power to them. I'll tell you. Yeah, the things that we've put in place from them, I used to hate them, honestly. They were a necessary evil in my world.
Absolutely.
And I mean, from where you get the random emails, it's like, okay, we need you to fill out these surveys, to do these audits and whatnot. It was like their whole model was based around, we're going to catch you for misusing our software.
Right.
And they find companies big time for doing that. But now they're offering such cost-effective solutions, it doesn't make sense.
Open sourcing the hell out of things.
They're learning from Google, I think.
That's why I'm very, very impressed with the greatest comeback story, unless Facebook pulls a rabbit out of its hat. The greatest comeback story in the tech industry won't be IBM, won't be any Nintendo. It won't be, I don't know, name a company that was on on its deathbed and now it's back. It will be Microsoft. It will literally be. It's been a slow 10-year slog, and their tools, particularly their developer tools. Some of it is expensive. Some other tools are still fairly expensive, but they're just good. They're just
Well, when
really,
you talk about Visual Studio, I mean the newest licensing, $45 a month per user. Hell, I'll buy that for myself just to have it, because and be legal. Why not? And have full access to the Microsoft Developer Network.
which is
a
in and of itself
no-brainer.
invaluable, and not to mention the fact that like you also now have the power of GitHub behind you, right? That's a
Yep.
Microsoft property now, and it's kind of they've just done the right things. I mean, people moaned and groaned because, oh my God, the evil. Because a lot of old school cats are out there don't really look at Microsoft the way they look at Microsoft the way we used to look at Microsoft. You said yourself, like back in the day, their tools were necessary evil, and
Yeah.
and now you're just like, no, this is not. This is a different Microsoft, man. I mean, even down to like Xbox. Like, I mean, the Xbox is really the first thing they did really, really really right. And I'm in the Azure stuff. I think was great. It's just I don't know. It's phenomenal. So
Yeah.
I mean,
Azure, I love the ability. If I need to spin up a server for an hour, I can do it.
right.
And they charge me by the minute. You need this much server for this much time? Okay. Here you go. It's done. It's in place.
Yeah, definitely when you're running microservices and stuff like that, or these kind of new Docker instances where it's just like you don't even need to bring up a full server instance. You just need to run a microservice. And so like, and Azure has the tools that allow you to come in, run that service, run that job, cron job or whatever, to date myself, and like get your data and then like get out of there, right? And so that's
And from a security standpoint, you're sitting on Microsoft, and Microsoft has, they will satisfy any auditor that comes in, and I don't need to show them, okay, this is my server cabinet, this is my key, I have to go through this door. I don't have to tell them any of that. All I have to do is say, go talk to Microsoft. That's where it is.
That's absolutely.
And
that's there's something to be said about these offsite, cloud services, these serverless instances and stuff, which is basically nothing more than like you're just running microservices. And where you just don't need
microservices, or even a dedicated SQL server or whatever, for your enterprise. It doesn't matter. I mean, you still have the power and the security of Microsoft behind you.
Yeah, and that's something to be said. Like that's something you couldn't have said 10 years ago without people like laughing you out of the room, or
Not at all.
or taking out their guns and training them on you. It's like, you take that back. That's BS. Microsoft is the devil. It's yeah. All right. This is funny. I am done singing the praises of Microsoft for now. They're doing a little better than Google. They're not as hated as Amazon. Amazon's not taking that mantle, and God forbid, everyone hates Facebook. But then after my tour of my local data center facility for Facebook, I have a newfound respect for them that I'll talk about in later episodes. But now we got to kind of move on to the last topic here, and this is actually kind of a continuation of what we discussed last week.
Yes,
and that is the rise of fear-based social media like Nextdoor, Citizen, and now Amazon's Neighborhood app.
Amazon's Neighborhood. Yep.
So I read. So it's a Vox article. Yes.
Okay.
I torture myself when I do such a thing. And they bring up a couple of good points about the fact that, like, look, these apps are and the fact that everyone's buying them, and the fact that these companies upsell people or sell people on them, kind of plays on the fact that, like, there's crime everywhere and things rampant. And crime is rampant everywhere, or violent crime is rampant everywhere, right? Well, the Vox article was right in the sense that, like, yes, violent crime is at its lowest rate in decades. This is true. That is in aggregate. I live in a city where we have had 112, 113 shootings in 114 days. So with
Wow.
27 fatalities. So I mean
Wow.
that's aggregate. Okay, so when we talk about lowest rate in decades in aggregate, they are correct. What they're not right about is the fact that property crime is high in a lot of cities, particularly a lot of urban areas, particularly where I live. And so the Nextdoor app and the Citizens app and the Neighbors app play into that fear, right? I mean, markets are going to play into those fears.
They always do. Fear sells more than anything else in
Yeah.
the world, and it always will.
That and sex. And so, yeah, I understand the sentiment of the article that this, woke chick from Brooklyn wrote. And basically, like, instead of getting into the fact that, like, maybe the reason why these fear-based apps are popular is because there seems to be a market failure, i.e., a government failure, in policing these small property crimes, and a market failure in a lot of other instances that people feel the need now to take advantage of these applications. No. In the age of wokeness, this article was going into it's a hotbed of racial stereotyping. Okay, maybe, right? But really, no.
Yeah,
that's not,
I
that's
saw
not-
that. I saw that component of it, and I just kind of started rolling my eyes. I was like, okay, I belong to my Nextdoor group for Laguna Niguel here in California, and I have not seen one single post on there talking about race or colors. It's mostly, hey, I saw this guy walking his dog and he couldn't control him, and I thought maybe he would jump out and bite me or something, but they don't mention anything about the person, at least not here in this one. And that's purely anecdotal, and I don't know how relevant that is, but
we're not
at the same
saying
time
that it doesn't happen. It's just saying that shouldn't be. That's not the underlying reason why maybe these apps are popular. Now, Amazon has a pretty cutthroat, cold-blooded, capitalist, legitimate reason. No one likes the packages that you deliver to your customers being stolen.
Right.
And so that's why
they've got a vested interest, right?
They have a huge vested interest in making sure that doesn't happen. And I was part of our neighborhood Nextdoor, Nextdoor app. And it basically, and I had some drinks with a friend of mine tonight, and she was like, "Yeah, I don't like looking at the Nextdoor app. It just made me paranoid." Right?
Well, you know what I think. You know what I think there is really. There is a voyeuristic desire amongst a lot of people this satisfies.
This is absolutely true. Like it's like I don't even mean like it's funny. I was going to wax eloquent about the fact that like we just live in this low trust society, and we just need to get we need to learn our neighbors, get to know our neighbors, learn our neighborhood and stuff like that. But I think at the most primal level, I think you're right. I think it's just the voyeuristic nature.
Yeah, people just want to look over the fence and go, "Ooh, what's going on there?" I can't tell you on my neighborhood Facebook group for the city. We've got a group that's run by some very militant administrators, and it's hilarious because one of the most polarized, and this is not to get too much off on a tangent, but to give you an idea of how weird this group is, one of the most polarizing topics, in fact, the most polarizing topics, is coyotes.
Only in the West, man.
I swear to you, anytime anyone mentions a coyote, in fact, in the group rules, it says, if you're going to post something about a coyote, post where you saw it, when you saw it, and then disable commenting. Because people eat each other up. It's hilarious.
And what
And
are they,
every
what are they
single
eating each other up about?
they were here first. We
Oh,
moved into
you
their
are
land,
got
and
to
then
be kidding
somebody
me.
else comes in and goes, "No, God damn it! I'm gonna protect my land at my cost, and that dang coyote's gonna die." Blah blah. And people get their blood boiling over a stupid coyote,
I mean,
and it's hilarious to watch, but. At the same time, the next most common post is, does anyone know what the helicopter's doing hovering over?
yeah.
And
It's
people,
funny,
I
like,
think,
you almost question the utility of the app when you have idiots in your neighborhood on it.
I don't know if it's idiots so much as just people who are so into their raw humanity. They want to know what's going on. And,
Yeah, I think so.
Whether it's even important or not, I don't know, but it's hilarious to watch. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, to bring it back around to though the voyeuristic angle is actually that kind of blows up my whole spiel, to be honest. Like, yeah, they might just be that. But no, I think generally speaking, like, these apps get traction because, yes, you're right. People are voyeuristic. People want to know what's going on around them because people aren't getting out of their damn houses and, like, talking to people, right?
Right.
And
Right.
like, getting to know their neighborhoods and stuff like that. But look, we know violent crime may be at an all-time low in aggregate, right? But property crime is still up, right? I mean, like,
Sure.
I guess I gave my example of, like, Walmart checking receipts in and out of the place. I don't have to submit to that, but that's never really been something that I've ever been pressured to do, and it's because we live in a very low trust society. Right?
We do.
And
a lot of that, like you said, it's a lack of human interaction and a lack of common understanding.
And so basically there's a market failure or cultural failure, right? Where
It's a cultural failure. Yeah.
where, like, these apps just kind of take the place of the neighborhood watch. And they take the place of neighborhood block parties and getting to know your neighbors and your kids and stuff like that. And it's, but to make this about, this article was mainly about just kind of saying, like, it's all about hating on brown people and stuff like that. So, like, this is the quote that kind of that made me just blow up, right? And it's just like, these apps are not the definitive guide to crime in a neighborhood. It is merely a reflection of people's own bias, that goddamn word, which criminalizes people of color, the unhoused, and other marginalized communities. This damn Arthur lives in gentrified Brooklyn, New York. Part of a metropolitan area that has the
what are they worried about?
Writing BS articles stating nonsense like this. Like, get out of here with that nonsense, man. Come to a mid-sized city that you fly over on the way back and forth to the coast, and deal with real people dealing with real issues. Property crime's a real thing. Oh, better yet, how about you come into Albuquerque and I drive you 4 hours south to the border? Right? Don't get me started on that. This is a tech show. But the simple fact of the matter is, I don't like when they take these stories and move them in that direction, because it's just like, there's other underlying human anthropological themes that we need to explore. The voyeuristic nature of man, the fact that people want to know what's going on around them because social interactions between neighbors is down. And, I mean, market failure in the fact that, like, the police can't stop petty property crime. We have a low-trust society. You have corporate interests. Like, it's like, hey, Amazon doesn't like freaking, their packages snatched up off of their customers' porches, right? That costs them money and prestige and reputation. And so that's ultimately, I mean, what's going on here. And I found that article very, very interesting because I know we had discussed it last week, and I just found it sort of fascinating in a way. And
I think I don't think we focus on the cultural aspect of things enough. If you look at any legislation, anything, it's going to deal with one of two things. It's either going to deal with money or it's going to deal with race. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what we boiled down to. And it's sad because there's so much more that's intangible to be gained from going next door, talking to your neighbor, sharing a drink, whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
No doubt. Absolutely.
You know, it reminds me of a story I saw a while back in the news. There was a little girl walking her dog, a little 7-year-old girl walking her dog, and people were calling the police because they didn't feel she was safe. I'm like, okay, this little girl's walking her dog around the block. Maybe instead of calling the police and reporting her parents to the authorities, maybe you could be a good neighbor and help watch out for her.
Absolutely.
You know,
I couldn't have said it
be
better
a human
myself.
being and go, that little girl needs all the help she can get. She's 7. And I'm going to sit here and watch out for her. And if anything comes about, I'm going to go out there and make my presence known.
Yeah.
We lack that. We lack that.
And yeah, and we use these apps as proxies for that. And I think we, you know, if you want to remove the human bias element out of it and stuff like that, don't blame the apps. Don't blame anything else other than look at the greater societal breakdowns. And
Yeah.
these apps either facilitate that, or they exacerbate it, or they are created to correct an overall issue.
We've covered a lot today, and you know, a lot of follow up from last week. So a lot to think about.
No, I feel a lot to think about, man, and definitely this has been a blast. So, with no further ado, let's wrap this up. Let's log off. I am Thaddeus Preston, aka Nick Way, NICKWAYE. You can follow me on Twitter. Yeah, no.
And I am Gary Guthrie, the old guy on the West Coast with no Twitter and none of that crap yet. So we'll see if I can ever get myself into the 19th century here.
No, man. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you at least on the Twitter at the very least and stuff like that, because you know we're gonna make this
Okay.
We're gonna make this a big extravaganza. We're gonna make this the biggest, best libertarian angle on tech in the industry. You mark my words. So with that said,
Love it.
All right, we're out. And, you know, stay tuned for next week, man. On Thank You for
All
Your
right.
Servers.
Bye now.